What's up guys, it's Matthew from JM Tech, and today we're going to be checking out one of the best new gaming mice that comes in at an absurd price. We're going to be checking out the Razer Viper Mini. Alright guys, so to start off with, I want to say that this isn't going to be a comparison video between the Viper Mini and either of the previous Viper models, the original Viper and the Viper Ultimate. I will make a few comparisons, but for now this is just going to be a standalone review of the Viper Mini. So with that being said, let's get started. So this mouse comes in at an absurdly low price point of $39.99, which still may not seem the cheapest to some of you, but for Razer, that's kind of crazy to have one of their flagship mice coming in at $39.99. So this mouse features Razer's Optical Switches, which have been revised since the Viper Ultimate. They're pretty good. They could still use a little bit of improvement, I would say. They do feel really good, but you can just tell there's something a little bit off. It doesn't feel quite like a normal mechanical switch. You can just tell there's something a little bit different with these optical switches. Both of the side buttons have little to no pre-travel. Really, I didn't notice any during gameplay. The front button has just a tad of both. I mean, just barely. And slightly more on the rear button, but like I said, it's nothing that I noticed when in use. The scroll wheel feels great, definitive scroll steps, tactile, a fairly light scroll wheel, decent middle click, just pretty decent all around, and it's also super quiet. So there's literally no flex whatsoever within this mouse. You can squeeze it as hard as you want in any direction and it's not gonna budge. However, it could just be my unit, but if I do give it a shake, you can hear there's just a little bit of rattle, and I'm actually pretty sure it's the mouse 1 and 2 lifting a little bit. Again, it could just be my unit, but who's going to be shaking their mouse around? It's just something to point out. There's no longer any rubber side grips like on the previous Viper models, which I think is a good thing, just because if you look at mice like the former Vipers, as well as like the Steel series, the Rival 310 and the Sensei 310, they can end up wearing and even peeling off over time. And due to the shape of the Viper, it's actually pretty easy to lift up anyways, and your ring, pinky, and thumb actually, the way they rest when you're gripping it makes it really easy to lift up. So the absence of rubber side grips doesn't really matter, and it's kind of a good thing. Another noticeable thing that is absent is the forward and back buttons on the right side of the mouse. So sorry to you lefties out there. Hopefully when they make the Viper Ultimate Mini, which I'm pretty sure will be coming pretty soon, I mean, just look at Razer's track record recently, then hopefully they'll add those. With all that out of the way, here's a sound test. So this mouse comes in at 61 grams with a bit of cable, and some people even recording as low as 59 grams, compared to the 69 of the original Viper and the 74 of the Viper Ultimate, making this one of the lightest gaming mice on the market, especially considering it doesn't have one of the hexagonal shells similar to what companies like Glorious, Final Mouse, and G-Wolves are offering. For dimensions, we're looking at 118 millimeters long by 53.5 millimeters at the grip, and 38.3 millimeters high, which is actually 0.5 more than the original Viper, which is interesting to note that even though they've shrunk both the length and the width, they've actually increased the height a little bit. This mouse is definitely suited for people with small to medium sized hands. My hands actually come in at 10.5 by 19.5 centimeters, so fairly more so on the medium to large side, so pretty much making this mouse to where I can only use it with fingertip grip, which is fine. I can kind of do like a modified claw, but I just typically use it in fingertip grip. However, if you have smaller to medium sized hands, you can probably use this with palm, fingertip, or claw, but it's going to be mainly suited for fingertip users. Let's talk about lighting. So Razer did add a new light strip along the bottom of the mouse that's really nice to look at. Some people might hate on it, saying that maybe they could have cut a little bit more weight, but who cares? It looks nice, and still it's only 61 grams, which is crazy. Obviously, we still have the Razer logo here. And one thing that I'm actually a little bit disappointed about, but it really doesn't matter, is that on the original Viper and the Viper Ultimate, whenever you turn the lighting off, you couldn't even tell that the Razer logo was there. So if you were going for a super stealth setup, it worked great. But now with the Viper Mini, when you don't have lighting turned on, you can still see the Razer logo, which is just a bit disappointing. It's a really minor thing, but just something to point out. By default, the lighting is just set to cycle through different colors. Obviously, you can change it through Synapse, which you either love or you hate. People are going to have their gripes about it. It's going to have its pros and cons. Personally, I'm not huge on Synapse. It's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. But obviously, if you want to change anything about the mouse, you will have to use it, but you can delete it afterwards, so yeah. I'm really not going to get into the software much in this video, but just a note on Synapse real quick. Obviously, you can change everything like the DPI and everything in Synapse, but one thing that is interesting is aside from, I believe, the DPI settings, if you want to rebind any buttons or anything like that, if you uninstall Synapse afterwards, or if you plug your mouse into another device, that will no longer work. You'll have to re-download Synapse and rebind those buttons later on. It's just something to point out. Another interesting difference between the original Viper and the Viper Mini is that they've actually moved the Dpi switcher from the bottom to the top, which is actually pretty nice if you want to rebind that, or if you change your DPI frequently, it's just a lot easier to get to. However, there is no longer a DPI indicator on the bottom anymore. So let's talk about the sensor. It's an optical sensor that goes up to 8500 DPI, and no, on paper it's not as good as the sensor in the Viper Ultimate. And I've seen a lot of people on both YouTube and Reddit making comments about how it's not that great of a sensor, and I'm sorry, but that's just wrong. Yes, on paper it's not as good as the one in the Viper Ultimate, but the one in the Viper Ultimate is completely overkill. It really is. I can't imagine why you'd ever even need to go up above maybe 4000 DPI. This sensor is still going to give you great tracking in FPS games and whatever else you're doing. Yes, the liftoff distance is a little high at around 2 CDs. I really don't know why they didn't just try to make it a little bit lower, but it's something that I really haven't noticed in game or in normal use at all. So this mouse features PTFE feet, and it actually has 2 large ones on both the front and back. And then in the center, it's actually not even a mouse foot, it's actually just a plastic molding. But the PTFE feet are great on any surface. It's going to track super smooth and glide really well. Now, one of the last things to note here is the SpeedFlex cable. And this may be one of the biggest drawbacks to this mouse. It's not bad, but it's really not that great either. It was just something that was kind of lackluster, you know, a little bit disappointing. It was something that they could have improved and almost had perfect. They could have been, you know, one of the top 3, you know, with stock mouse cables. The SpeedFlex cable is kind of their interpretation of a paracord, and it's okay. I would definitely recommend using it with a bungee. It just seems like they too heavily insulated the wires. It's a little stiff. It kind of holds its shape, but at the same time, it's not bad. It's still worlds better than, you know, the old braided cables and rubber cables that used to be on gaming mice. But it's just something that just leaves quite a bit to be desired. Again, it's not bad, but it's not that great either. And it's probably the biggest drawback of the entire mouse. Alright guys, so with all that being said, let's go back a few months to the release of the Viper Ultimate, and a lot of people loved it and said that it may even be close to the end-all be-all of gaming mice. And even another tech YouTuber, Brandon Taylor, said that if Razer were to make a smaller version of the Viper Ultimate, that it might very well be the end-all be-all for most gamers out there. So, does the Viper Mini accomplish that? No. It's really close, and I do have a strong feeling they will make a Viper Mini Ultimate that will fix this. But why is it not the end-all be-all? Well, first off, the cable. We've already talked about that. It's just not the greatest. Also, it's not a true ambidextrous mouse, so left-handed people won't be able to use the forward and back buttons. My recommendation to Razer, do something like the Logitech G900, where they had the modular system to where you could either have buttons on you could have 2 buttons on the one side and 2 buttons on the other, or you could have 2 buttons on one and then put a little plastic molding piece on the other, and it was a modular system. That would be my recommendation. Aside from that, if they just tweak the optical switches just a little bit more, keep the weight low and the battery life good if they make a wireless version, will that be the end-all be-all? Probably, but we'll just have to wait and see. Alright guys, thank you so much for checking out my review of the Razer Viper Mini. If you want to buy it, be sure to click the link in the description down below. Anyways, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.